Welcome to Sara Gonzales Unfiltered. It is Monday, and I went about my morning and thought, I wonder what I'm going to talk about today. And then it was just like a boom waterfall of all sorts of different breaking news that kind of a big deal. So I want to get into what's going on in Texas. Texas just got some really good news as far as the border is concerned, and also want to get into the breaking SCOTUS decision that just happened today. I remember this morning we were I read a tweet that said SCOTUS has decided they are not going to be in today and that they will have an opinion Monday morning, which is very, very rare, very unlike them to release just randomly be like, we're going to release an opinion Monday morning and we're not coming in today. So people realized, you know what, this is probably going to be the decision on the Colorado, whether or not Donald Trump remains on the presidential ballot in Colorado, reversing the ruling of the Colorado Supreme Court. And that's what it was, 9-0. Unanimously ruled. When you've got the libs on board, like Elena Kagan and Sonia Sotomayor agreeing that this whole case was BS, you know it's going to be a good day. And I want to bring in my friend Chad Prather, of course, host of the Chad Prather Show, also America's favorite cowboy and Blaze TV contributor, to discuss this. So we knew it was going to be coming, or at least it should have been implied that this decision was going to be coming, because Colorado's primary is right around the corner, and the Supreme Court had already heard oral arguments a couple weeks ago. So we were just kind of waiting for this impending decision. And I think everyone who was paying attention was pretty confident that this was going to be the decision. So I think we were like, well, is it going to be 8-1 or 9-0? Now it was 9-0. But the Supreme Court did assert that the responsibility for enforcing the clause against federal office holders and candidates lies with the Congress, not with the states. And the ruling also marked the first instance where the Supreme Court had the opportunity to define what constitutes engaging in insurrection, as outlined in the third section of the 14th Amendment. So some discrepancies within that ruling, but overall 9-0 ruling.
Yeah, it's weird, right? 9-0. I mean, handed them a shutout. I mean, just take the L, Colorado. I mean, they're down there trying to play law and justices, and the Supreme Court just gave them a smackdown. I think they had to. I would love to know. I'd love to be a fly on the wall. I don't even know if this is how it works, but I'd love to know if there was any communication in the halls of the Supreme Court, like basically saying, listen, if we come out 5-4 on this thing, there's going to be some massive unrest in our country. This was a thing that, you're playing fast and loose with the Constitution, the interpretation of the 14th Amendment. You're letting judicial activism get in the way of the rule of law. There's so many implications that are there. So I'm thankful. I think this had to come out 9-0.
Yeah.
Because, we're on the precipice of some significant unrest in our society if this is a closer vote.
Right.
Because I think we're sitting in a lot of ways on a powder keg, and God only knows what might have happened if the Supreme Court had sided with the Colorado Supreme Court.
Which, again, it was like you're looking at it and you're like, they don't have a case. Clearly, they don't have a case. But how many times have we seen them not have a case and still the liberal activists on the court end up siding against the Constitution anyway?
Yeah, because you get back into the thing where you're interpreting the law or interpreting the Constitution based on a fantasy world. It's something that you came up with. You felt this way. Your emotions ruled out, and it just kind of replaced the rule of law, and it replaced facts and truth. He hasn't been, we can rehearse the words and the vocabulary, right? The buzzwords. He's never been accused of insurrection. He certainly hasn't been convicted of insurrection. So to call this president seditious and try to keep him off the ballot, and I think their argument, and I could be wrong on this, but I'm just kind of paraphrasing, they basically said because he has been disqualified from being president, therefore we're going to keep him off the ballot in Colorado. When was he disqualified? Because it disqualified maybe in the court of public opinion in Colorado, but we know how high those people are. So, I don't know how you're thinking or what you're thinking, but this is when you replace the rule of law, the Constitution, and strict interpretation of that precious document with how you feel and judicial activism. I mean, whether it's lawfare or judicial tyranny, which I've called it for the last couple of years, this is a boot on your neck tactic to tell the people of Colorado, we're going to dictate to you how you can vote, who you can vote for, and then we're going to say we're protecting democracy. You're doing the exact opposite.
So I'm glad that you brought up that term democracy, because they like to throw around the word democracy as if we are one, which we're not,
right,
but B, as if that is the most important. Not only do they claim we're one, but it also is the most important thing to keep, to cherish, to uphold, all these things. And then you have people like Keith Olbermann, who tweeted out earlier, the Supreme Court has betrayed democracy. Its members, including Jackson Kagan and Sotomayor, have proved themselves inept at reading comprehension. And collectively, the court has shown itself to be corrupt and illegitimate. It must be dissolved. So now we have to save democracy by removing political opponents from presidential ballots. That's how we're going to save democracy, Chad. That's how we're going to do it. We're just going to eliminate people's right to be on the ballot and eliminate the people's right to vote for these candidates.
Yeah, and then you're just going to eliminate the third branch of the American government.
Right.
Like, you're just going to get rid of the judiciary.
We don't need that. They're a threat to democracy.
They didn't go the way Keith Olbermann thought it should go, so we're going to get rid of, our 9 Supreme Court justices and just, these people, what they always accuse the right of doing, if you'll just listen to them long enough, they'll say the quiet parts out loud. They want a dictatorship.
Yes.
They want fascism. They want the military turned against American civilians. They want the president of the United States to be. I mean, when Whoopi Goldberg comes out on The View and says, Joe Biden should throw all Republicans into jail, this is what they want. So if you're going to completely throw out all 9 Supreme Court justices, just get rid of the Supreme Court, like a guy like Keith Olbermann, and I don't know how much anybody takes seriously the opinion of a Keith Olbermann. I mean, they don't take my opinion seriously, so I don't know why they would take his seriously. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all commentators and entertainers.
Yeah, but there's something quite unhinged about Keith Olbermann these days. Like, you have to believe that
Not just these days.
Well, you have to believe that he just doesn't even have a family member who's willing to tell him, like, hey, you're really crazy and you need help.
I watch these people and I'm like, if I ever get that far out on the limb. Now, look, I'm like you. We don't make any apologies about it. Sometimes we get on there, we punch through the smoke just to see if anybody's listening or if we've been shadow banned or if we could still stir shit up. Mm-hmm. This guy's beyond that. Stephen King is beyond that. Whoopi Goldberg. These people have lost their freaking mind. Like, I would hope that if I got that far out on that shaky branch, that somebody that loves me enough, I would hope, Sarah, that you would call me and be like, Chad, bro, what are you? Did you break up? I mean, are you
okay?
Are you contemplating things? Do you need to call a hotline? Can we get you help? Should we have an intervention? Did your wiener fall off? I mean, what is wrong, dude? Because this is climactic.
So all of this is true. Keith Olbermann is like batshit crazy. That is absolutely correct. But the idea that we have to save democracy by removing a presidential candidate from the ballot is not just crazy people like Keith Olbermann, because now the Democrats, after this ruling was announced, which I'm sure that they probably had a feeling that it was going to play out this way if they listened to the oral arguments where Colorado's, lawyers got shredded in the process by people like Ketanji Brown Jackson. And you're like, if the lady who can't even tell you what a woman is completely obliterating your argument into the Supreme Court, you probably don't have a chance. But since this ruling, it's been Jamie Raskin, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and Eric Swalwell who have now said that they are going to try to introduce legislation. Since the Supreme Court said it has to be a law, it has to go through Congress, it can't go this way. You're just a state, you can't do it. So they're like, fine. We have an intention to revive legislation that would establish a process disqualifying individuals, specifically targeting those involved in insurrection under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. So here we go all over again. Now they said, all right, well, the Supreme Court said we can only do it through Congress, so that's what we're going to do. Again, to save democracy. We're going to save democracy, Chad.
And if you guys think this is just about Donald Trump, obviously it's not. Any candidate that was out there, I don't care if it was Nikki Haley, they'd be calling Nikki Haley an insurrectionist too if she was the Republican candidate. And you, Ron DeSantis, apologist, listen, God bless Ron DeSantis, but they would be saying he's even worse.
They already were you already saw them starting to do that when he
said
entered the primary process.
But he's worse. I said that on my show a long time ago. They're just going to add 3 words to their descriptions of Ron DeSantis. So I will say this to those of you who look forward to a Ron DeSantis candidacy in 2028, as do I. You better be glad Donald Trump is the sacrificial lamb at this stage in the game. So at least you can, if you'll read the tea leaves a little better than you did in Ron's campaign this go around, maybe you'll know what's coming for you in 2028. But you guys got your head under the rock, and I don't care who gets pissed off at me at this point in time. Listen, Donald Trump is the guy for such a time as this because he is the sacrificial lamb. There's very few people on the planet that could take the pressure that's been thrown on this guy, the weight that's been put on his shoulders, the indictments, the accusations, the falsehoods, all of the stuff that's out there. It's like, let this guy be the gladiator that he is, throw your support behind him, and I'm telling you, if you think this is just about Donald Trump, you're dumb. They're going to come after every Republican candidate in perpetuity from now on that the GOP puts out there. And this is the type of rhetoric they're going to use. They're not just going to move legislation or use the Supreme Court of a various state to remove them from the ballot. They're going to do it with, it's not just about Trump, they're going to do it with every single one of them. You're a MAGA extremist Republican. That's what the President of the United States has called you. You've already been labeled. You've been classified. You're a neo-Nazi. You're a fascist. You're every damn thing else that they can come up with. So you're all guilty of that whole deal. And they're going to use people like Swalwell and Wasserman Schultz. They're all these pinheads who we know, my God, when they put their head together, it sounds like a bowling alley. There's not a collective thought there. There's no complexity whatsoever. I mean, there's just synapses are not firing. And they're going to introduce legislation to get a Republican candidate removed from the ballot. A house divided can't stand. This is a house of cards. America's in trouble. I mean, our days are done because we're so divided. There's no way.
Let me give you more. Well, let me give you one more way that they're trying to save
democracy.
There's more. But wait, there's more. So Attorney General Merrick Garland, over the weekend, do you? He was talking about election integrity efforts. And I want to keep in mind, like, election integrity efforts are like, hey, you should have an ID to vote. Hey, we probably shouldn't just have drop boxes that you can just drop off ballots. Like, maybe we should have a more secure process, to protect that precious democracy that you guys are always screaming about. And Merrick Garland, the United States Attorney General, came out over the weekend and was like, yeah, those are just burdensome and unnecessary. Watch.
The right to vote is still under attack.
Yeah,
and
no kidding.
That is why the Justice Department is fighting back. That is why one of the first things I did when I came into office was to double the size of the voting section of the Civil Rights Division. That is why we are challenging efforts by states and jurisdictions to implement discriminatory, burdensome, and unnecessary restrictions on access to the ballot, including those related to mail-in voting, the use of drop boxes, and voter ID requirements. That is why we are working to block the adoption of discriminatory redistricting plans that dilute the vote of Black voters and other voters of color.
So, call me crazy, okay? Personally, I think it's a little racist to assume that Black people are too damn dumb to get an ID.
Thank you.
I think that's a little I think that's racist. I think Black people are quite capable of getting an ID to vote. I don't understand what the controversy is here.
Let's interpret what the Attorney General just said in I'm assuming a Black church. That's the first I've seen of that.
In Alabama.
Okay. Everyone in front of me here today is too stupid and incapable of getting an ID and being able to go vote. So we're going to step up our discriminatory practices so that those of you who are too inept to identify yourself at a polling location can get your vote counted. That's an insult.
It is.
Stop with the nonsense of saying we're going to find some other way to scam the system, lower the standard so that, listen, I was at a polling place the other day. I voted early in the state of Texas. I looked around. It was a crowd. There were a lot of people. The line was out the door. I wasn't specifically paying attention to skin color, but now that I look back, pretty much everybody was there. There were elderly people. There was a lady on a walker. They actually said, you know what? You skipped the line. Come around the back. Wait, we're going to help you in. I mean, these folks are making it as easy as possible.
Right.
I mean, I did this unthinkable thing. I walked up to the desk, and I gave him a driver's license. He looked at it, scanned it. He goes, "Is this still your address?" "Yeah." "Okay, here's a ballot." I signed the little piece of paper. It was simple. I didn't feel privileged in that moment.
Right.
I didn't feel awarded. I didn't feel like I had, oh, look at my white skin that just got me in here to do something that black people can't do. I literally stood in a booth next to a black lady who was wearing a mask. I remember because she was wearing the mask. And she had a Democrat ballot. Okay? So I remember that because she was in line in front of me. She was wearing the mask. I stereotyped her. And guess what? I was
You were right. You were right on that one.
And so, and she did the same thing. God bless her. She did the same thing. She handed him her ID. And I didn't see like any fight the power or nothing. Like there was none of that. She just did it and she voted. And we canceled each other's votes out. Yeah. And that was that. Well, it was a primary. We didn't.
Yeah, you didn't. Yeah. And also we're in Texas. So
open primary. She should have got one of those Republican ballots.
Chance. Yeah, exactly. Which I would just like to add before I know we got to go to a break, but if you vote, you should also want secure voting. Like that should matter to you so that your vote actually matters. Because if it is not secure, keep in mind that can always be used against you. Just because you're on the right side of that now, if you're a Democrat, doesn't mean that later on it won't be used against you. Like that should be something that we can all agree upon, is that our voting system should be secure. And if you don't agree with that, you're pretty suspect, I would just say. All right, we got to take a break. And then when we come back, we have a very special guest, Lara Trump, joining us when we return. Joining us now, a woman who I would say needs no introduction. We have Lara Trump in the house, ready to talk about. There's a lot going on with you right now. Yeah. So I want to talk to you first about your new children's book. I love this organization, Brave Books.
Yes.
My kids read their books, and you have one now. It's called The Never Give Up Pup. Tell us about it.
Well, I thank you for saying that about Brave. When I first heard what they were doing, I was like, thank goodness someone finally did this. Because every parent out there, I feel like we're always concerned. What are our kids reading? What are they learning? What kind of messaging are they getting? And Brave is something that you can feel good with this company, sending your kids there to get lost in their books. Fantastic. They all have, a moral and a lesson that they teach. The Never Give Up Pup is about hard work. Whenever I was thinking about what is it that I try to instill in my kids, what is it that my parents taught me? One of the great lessons, I think, was good work ethic. And I feel like it's something that's really lacking in today's society. Things are so accessible and easy, and everybody needs a safe space. Mm-hmm. And I think we need to teach our kids about hard work. And so that's basically the moral of the story.
That's a great point because, you have seen the left, they're like forgiving student loan debt and trying to make it as easy as possible for people to just get by doing as little as possible.
Decreasing standards, participation trophies, all of it. And really, this came from a true story that was part of my life, which is that I went and tried out in high school for the JV cheerleading team and major stuff. But I was so devastated because I didn't make it. I got cut.
Oh, you could rub that in their face today.
Yeah, well, it worked out.
Show up at the reunion.
Because I remember my dad was a huge athlete, and he was like, listen, you got to just work harder. We're going to have the next year. You're going to get ready and you go try out again. And the next year I had worked so hard that I didn't make JV. I made the varsity team.
Oh, that's great.
And so when I was thinking about this story, I thought, it was such a good lesson for me. Yeah. Sometimes your failures are actually your best lessons learned and teach you the most. And so that's the case in the story as well.
That's awesome. Tell everyone where they can find your book.
Bravebooks.com, The Never Give Up Pup. And obviously it's there, but they have their series, as you mentioned. Yes. It kind of grows with your kid and the stories change. So the older your child gets or your children get or grandkids, it grows with them too. So they do a great job.
And they have this little, I'll just mention, give Brave Books another shout out here. They have this little treasure island map type thing that the kids can put up. My son has one on his wall. And so with each book, they get a particular little coin looking thing that it corresponds with the map. And so it's really, really fun and interactive for the kids as well. And so I'm really excited to see you as one of their latest authors. So I mentioned a lot going on for you all at the same time.
All at once. That's how we do it in the Trump family. We just go hard.
I believe that.
Yeah.
So you've also announced your candidacy for RNC co-chair with Ronna McDaniel announced that she's stepping down. Thank God, finally. Sorry, it's my words, not hers. Okay, but there are a lot of people who are like, well, but do we want someone that's within the family? And I'm like, I think we need someone who's just willing to say, I'm going to burn the whole place to the ground and start, from total refresh. So tell everyone about what your vision is for the RNC.
Well, we don't have time to fully burn it down because we've got an election to win on November 5th. So listen, this is a position for which I never imagined I'd run, but I also never imagined our country would be in such a bad spot. We really are in dire straits. We really have a must-win election on November 5th. And the reality is you cannot win a presidential election without the Republican National Committee. They go hand in hand. You need their support to do it. You need their fundraising and their apparatus all across the country to do it. And so I think that the keys here are going to be changing our approach at elections. Because listen, as conservatives, I get it. We want one day, we want paper ballots, we want voter ID everywhere, but we don't live in that day right now. And the way we get to that spot is electing President Donald Trump, taking back the Senate, and expanding our lead in the House. So we can actually make those substantive changes, and elections will be safer, more transparent. We all feel better about them. Right now, what do we need to do? We need to make sure that early voting is something we are talking about as conservatives. The first day early voting starts in your state, wherever you are in this country, get out and vote. Then you take someone with you every day up until Election Day to vote. We need banked votes so that we are not going into Election Day at a deficit. Ballot harvesting everywhere it is legal across this country. These are things that we've never done before as Republicans, or the party has never attempted to do. We're going to start doing them. We are also going to have, and I will give credit to the RNC already, they started doing this, trained poll watchers. These are people who can physically handle the ballots. They can count how many ballots are coming into a location, how many are going out, so we don't have miraculous suitcases full of ballots showing up after or on Election Day. And so that's the vision. Look, we have a lot of work to do. We need to reestablish trust in this entity, the RNC, which is why a Trump family member being there, you better believe that I'm going to be watching every penny and ensuring it goes to causes we care about.
Yeah. Would you consider working with Scott Pressler?
I think Scott Pressler's amazing. Great. I think he has done what he's done for voter registration is incredible. I want to put him in charge of our legal ballot harvesting operation. That's my number one guy.
I love that.
Yeah.
Because for so long he had been completely overlooked by the RNC, and he was the one that was out there doing all the hard work.
What a rock star. That kind of energy is what it's going to take to win. The grassroots people like Scott Pressler, we need to tap into that. Because again, we don't have a lot of time. And look at the Democrats. We know what they have. They have the whole media apparatus behind them, right? That's basically their marketing arm. We know that they've been slippery in elections before, I'll put it nicely, and it's not going to be their first rodeo. So we've got to play the game even better than they are. I love the idea of Scott Pressler, absolutely.
You know, you and I talked recently on my show about is there any salvation for the RNC? And we kicked around some different ideas and options and what it would take. So if you, let's say you and Scott, in a perfect example in my mind, you guys take the helm, you guys are in there. How much has to kind of be rooted out in terms of the darkness and the corruption? Or with 8 months until November, how quickly are you up and running that this thing is effective again?
Yeah. Well, listen, we're going to kind of take a look at everything. The vote is the 8th, Friday. So assuming, I am elected co-chair, we've got to check out every vendor that the RNC is using. We've got to check out all the staff there. We really have a lot to cover, of course, in a small amount of time, but I do think we're going to have an effective operation. Michael Whatley, who is poised to take over as chair, when Ronna steps down, is an amazing guy. This is a guy who was the GOP chair in the state of North Carolina, my home state. That is one of the few states in 2020 where you did not have a lot of questions about transparency of the election. We didn't have a lot of funny business going on, and it's because he had 500 plus lawyers on Election Day ready to go. They were staged at polling locations, and they were ready to call out anything that looked a little fishy to them. Mm-hmm. That's also something we're going to have to do nationwide and in every key swing state across this country.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So Nikki Haley just recently over the weekend, she's bragging because she finally won her first primary in D.C.
Bless her heart.
Really, I'm like, that's not something to brag about that you won in the swamp. Like, that should tell us all we need to know about you. But she also, over the weekend after this, big win, Nikki. She resisted agreeing that she would honor the pledge that she signed previously, that she agreed to support the Republican nominee. Here's some of that clip.
You did sign a pledge, an RNC pledge, to support the eventual nominee. Do you still feel bound by that pledge?
I have always said that I have serious concerns about Donald Trump. I have even more concerns about Joe Biden.
So is that a no? Are you bound by the RNC pledge?
The RNC pledge, I mean, at the time of the debate, we had to take it to where would you support the nominee? And you had to, in order to get on that debate stage, you said yes. The RNC is now not the same RNC. Now it's
so you're no
Trump's
longer bound
daughter-in-law.
by that pledge.
No, I think I'll make what decision I want to make, but that's not something I'm thinking about. And I think that while y'all think about that, I'm looking at the fact that we had thousands of people in Virginia. We're headed to North Carolina. We're going to continue to go to Vermont and Maine and all these states to go and show people that there is a path forward. And so I don't look at what ifs. I look at how do we continue the conversation.
But it's a pledge. I'm like, but so you're admitting to people that they can't trust you because you just said yourself, well, I only signed it to get on stage, but I didn't actually mean it.
Yeah. Well, isn't it Gavin Newsom who said that she was like the best talking head for the Democrats or something? Like she was really doing them a solid. There you go. I mean, look, this woman, and I do say bless her heart, and everyone from North Carolina knows what that means. And I think y'all know in Texas what that means as well. There is no path to becoming the Republican nominee for president for Nikki Haley. So a lot of people say, what is this woman doing? Why are you still in this? Why are you accepting donations? Why are you using money that could go towards what we need to actually focus on, beating Joe Biden, taking back the White House, giving this country back to the people on November 5th? What is she doing? And a lot of people say, well, she must be banking on the least democratic thing possible happening, which is that one of these indictments, one of these phony, bogus indictments against Donald Trump actually takes him out of the race. And then, she could slip in. I will say, I've said this before, I'll say it again. Any person who is not standing up in the face of that and calling it out for the communist tactic that it is should not be able to run for president, including Nikki Haley.
I completely agree.
Yeah,
completely
it's ridiculous.
Agree. It really is. So I know you've got a tight schedule here, and I want to respect your time. I would love to get you on again. Maybe I know you're not here that often. But
I would love to.
Absolutely. Let's do a Skype.
Pencil me in.
Great. I love it.
Absolutely.
All right. So make sure that you stay on the lookout. Go to, bravebooks.com.
Bravebooks.com. Check them out. They're incredible. Parents, grandparents. It's the best thing for our kids. And who doesn't want a book in front of your kid instead of a screen?
Yes.
It's about time.
You, girl.
Yeah.
Don't even get me started on that. You are preaching to the choir here. He knows it.
I know it. I keep calling the folks at Brave Books saying, I want to write a book. And they're like,
I am too.
We're like, lose our number.
They're like, hold on.
Who are you?
So Lara Trump, of course, host of The Right View, also newfound children's book author, the Never Give Up pup, and of course, co-chair candidate for the RNC. And you have our best wishes on that.
Thank you very much.
We need you in there helping us shake things up, getting rid of Ronna Romney McDaniel. Don't forget that that's her maiden. All right, we got to take a break. We'll be right back. Oh, actually, just kidding. We have a spot. Relief Factor. Don't forget about Relief Factor as well. So those I'm enamored by her. I forgot. So those of you who are living in pain, millions of Americans are, and you just think it's always nagging, and you're like, this is just the way it is now. Well, it actually isn't so. You need to try Relief Factor if you are one of those people. It's an all-natural anti-inflammatory. It was developed by doctors. So they know what they're doing, but it's not like one of those strong pain medications where you're going to get super loopy or anything like that. It actually addresses the root cause of the pain, which is the inflammation in your body that is giving you that pain. So this can be life-changing. 70% of the people who order the 3-week quick start go on to keep ordering more. That's how many people it's working for. So I'd say the odds are in your favor. It's going to work for you. And if it could change your life. You can go to relieffactor.com, order that 3-week quick start over at relieffactor.com. So more seemingly good news if you are a conservative. over the weekend, just now, breaking, a federal appeals court ruled that allowing the Texas immigration law, Senate Bill 4, to take effect. So law enforcement officers in Texas are now authorized to arrest and jail any illegal immigrants crossing the border. This was the Fifth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals that granted a temporary stay. So Senate Bill 4, SB 4, can take effect this week unless the Supreme Court intervenes. I have a feeling the Supreme Court they're a little busy right now with other things. But this is, of course, the bill, SB 4, that allows state law enforcement to arrest and detain individuals suspected of entering the country illegally. And it was shocking to me that we had a court system that said, no, Texas is not allowed to protect and defend their own sovereignty. Otherwise, what are we doing here? Not like in this country with regard to Mexico, but also in this country with regard to, like, why do we have borders at all? Why is there a border between Texas and Oklahoma? Why is there a border between any state if we are told that we are not allowed to defend our sovereignty and keep illegals out of our state? But for now, some good news here in Texas when it comes to defending our own, immigration laws.
You said it's good news for conservatives. It's good news for Americans.
You're right.
That can be upheld, whether you appreciate more border security and protection or not, or you don't think it's an issue, or you have your head in the sand and you think that this is just mean stuff that we're trying to do here. This is good for you. I will see what happens with the Supreme Court. The bigger issue, the underlying thing that's problematic, and this is becoming more and more a reality with all of these issues that pop up when you start getting the courts involved. The state of Texas should not ever have to ask the federal government for permission to protect its borders. The fact that we've started to normalize this is problematic. It's not constitutional. I remind everybody that, once upon a time in this country, loyalty to your state was far more important than loyalty to your nation. That's a historical fact. That's why Robert E. Lee became the general of the South. He could not see himself fighting against his home state of Virginia, and that's why he made his choice, no matter how bad Lincoln wanted him to be his general with the Union armies. That was the understanding in those days. Your loyalty was to your state. That's why the state of Texas has its own constitution. It's specific about how we're able to protect our borders. And you're right, Sarah. Why do we have borders at all if you're not going to secure them? And people say, well, we've got to, you can go all the way back to the Old Testament, which, by the way, the Old Testament law is the republic ideal that we built this country on. Our founding fathers looked at the Mosaic law and said, this is the way we're going to pattern a lot of our government. And, God told the Israelites, he said, listen, I want you to have a border. I don't want you associating with certain people. I don't want you intermarrying with certain people. There were reasons why he wanted them to be his separate people. Now, again, we're not Old Testament Israelites wandering through the wilderness, but we are a people. We do have a way of life. We do have a culture. We do have a language. And so this idea that we have to go and ask the federal government, hey, is it okay if we, put up a deterrent down there at the southern border, or we apprehend people who are coming across the border? I hate this tactic, but you ask the family of Laken Riley, who was murdered in Georgia by a Venezuelan who was arrested in New York, released, and winds up down in Georgia again. The federal government, Mayorkas even, and we'll probably talk about this later on, Mayorkas, who's like, oh, well, the federal government didn't know where he was or what was going on, and he tries to put the blame on, other deals. And I'm like, part of me says, listen, screw the federal government, let the states do what they have to do to protect themselves. But then the other part of me looks at the administration here in Austin, Texas, and says, are you really doing anything? Because historically, it's been nothing more than campaign headlines that Greg Abbott has done. And it's been, so much of it has been done for optics. But here we are. We're in trouble.
And I do want to get to what Alejandro Mayorkas said. It's just despicable. But you're right. There is a lot of optics. It's a lot of like a smokescreen when it comes to how much Texas is actually doing. I love that this ruling came out because I think that I think that for so long, Greg Abbott was like, the courts aren't going to make us actually do something, right? We've got this small area that we put razor wire in, and we've got this one park in Shelby Park where we are kind of taking over. But other than that, the buoys, please, there's like 3 buoys.
Right.
It's all within a tiny amount of area. It's not like there are a bunch of buoys that are blocking. It's not like there's a bunch of razor wire that's blocking the entirety of the border. All of that is optics. And so to me, I don't believe that Greg Abbott actually means business. I feel like he felt his hand was forced.
Yeah.
And so now it's like, okay, well, be prepared to double down on that, buddy, because the higher court just gave you the ability to do so. So now we get to see if all the talk continues to contribute to action, because you just did the smallest amount possible.
Yeah.
Now they're giving it to you, so go do something.
I'm glad you say that, because I get the nasty grams every time I say something about Greg Abbott, because I've talked about this ad nauseum, and I've backed it up with the facts, and people don't like that. The judge just bitter about it. No, I'm not bitter. I just love the state of Texas. I love America. I love our country. I love, I want us to have a secure border. I don't like,
Also, to your point, Jaco Booyens has been there. Yeah. He has gone to the place where the buoys are. It's a very, he's shown us pictures. He's talked about it. So this isn't just Chad's bitter. This is this is just fact from people who have been down there to see.
People want to shield their eyes. Now, I will say this, just a little bit of deterrent. I mean,
yes, I'm glad.
It helped a great deal, because when they enforced the razor wire and said we were going to put more razor wire down there, the folks that were coming across there in Eagle Pass at Shelby Park, they just moved, they said, well, they stopped coming across at the park. Yeah, they moved 200 yards up the river and started coming across over there.
Right.
People don't realize stuff like that.
Yes.
Abbott's doing such a fantastic job. Is he?
And again, it took him 3 years to do it.
Yeah.
So that's why I don't believe.
He talks about the same thing every time it's campaign season again.
Exactly.
And around Texas, it's always campaign season. And Jason Buttrell here at The Blaze has his own docuseries or documentary that's coming out. He's been down there, too, looking at some things. And just watch his deal.
Yeah. So again, I want to give Governor Abbott credit for what he has done. But has he actually addressed the problem as a whole? No. And anyone should be suspicious of the fact that it took him 3 years of doing it. How many times did the guy declare an invasion? I declare an invasion! Okay, and then what?
Yeah.
Nothing happened. So I'm just saying, great, I'm glad that you're doing that, but with all the billions of dollars that you guys are spending and calling it Operation Lone Star and taking victory laps at these campaign parties, I'm sorry, I hesitate to give you as much credit as you think you deserve, mostly because you think you deserve it. And that's my first clue that you don't.
And you consistently think it's a win whenever the federal government gives you permission to do something against the federal government.
Right.
That is not a win. Right. That's just a reminder that the boot is on your neck. The federal government is in control, and the fact that we say, we got a win here in Texas because the courts have ruled that we can do this in spite of that's...
How far we've fallen.
Right. You should give the middle finger to the federal government in regards to this and say, listen, this is our state, this is our border, this is what we're going to do, we're going to protect it. You don't like it, you come down here and you arrest my ass and put me in jail for it. Mm-hmm. You want to create an optic, roll Greg Abbott into the penitentiary. That's an optic, Greg. Campaign on that, bro. Seriously.
Yeah.
Let's go with it.
By the way, voting day is tomorrow. Chad's not bitter. Voting day is tomorrow. Those of you who, everyone who you have a primary, make sure that you go participate in the process. Make sure that you're just not taking some sample ballot that's pre-filled in by some rhino incumbent as you're going into the polls. Make sure that you are educated. Take your favorite grassroots organization in your state where you are. Go to them. Get your information from them. Sometimes they will also have all of their list of preferred candidates. Use a list from an organization that you trust. Don't wait till you get to the polls. Here in Texas, I encourage everyone to use the organization Red Wave Texas. I believe that you can find that voter guide at redwavetexas.org. If that's not the right address, make sure to just Google it, and they will give you from top to bottom who you need to be voting for in this primary if you want the most conservative candidates. And by the way, if you are in HD 65, vote for Mitch Little. I'm so sick of the rhino that is in this spot. I am so tired of it. So I just vote Mitch Little. All right. And don't forget to vote. Just whatever you do, vote, but be informed before you vote, because we don't like stupid voters. I don't like the idea that everyone should vote. If you're not going to inform yourself, please don't go vote. Please don't. I don't want you there. Okay. All right. We got to take another quick break. We'll be back with more. And then I want to get into Alejandro Mayorkas, his comments about the federal government and the Laken Riley situation. First, we want to thank our sponsor, Patriot Mobile. So Patriot Mobile. We were just at an event that was sponsored by Patriot Mobile for the Denton County Get Out the Vote rally. That was for Mitch Little. We had Attorney General Ken Paxton there. We had Steve Bannon there. We had Chad Prather there. We had several different representatives from the Texas House that are the good guys that were there. And Patriot Mobile sponsored the whole thing.
Yeah.
Because
700-800 people showed up. It was great.
It was huge. They filled up the venue. The venue was packed. It's just a county thing, right? And it was huge. And Patriot Mobile is not only America's only Christian conservative wireless provider, they are also putting their money where their mouth is. So instead of funding the left, what you're going to get with Patriot Mobile is you're going to get the same dependable nationwide coverage. They're going to give you the ability to access all three major networks, but they are also going to do things like they're going to help the grassroots conservative candidates in your area. They're going to help with flipping school boards so that you have a school board that isn't providing porn to your kids in elementary school. These are the fights that Patriot Mobile has been involved in, and they are putting their money where their mouth is, and they're helping support the cause in a grassroots kind of way. So if you guys have not yet checked out Patriot Mobile, please go there. They've got all sorts of different plans. They've got all sorts of different options. You can keep your phone number, you can keep your phone, or you can get everything brand new. Do whatever you want over at patriotmobile.com/Sarah. You will get free activation as well when you use the offer code Sarah. Remember, there is no H. It's just an unnecessary letter. It's SARA. patriotmobile.com/Sarah. Going back to your comment, Chad, about the recently impeached, by the way, Alejandro Mayorkas, Department of Homeland Security Secretary, his comments on the Laken Riley situation, because, people obviously are like, this was completely preventable. This could have been avoided. It's something I've said. It's something you've said. It's something anyone with a functioning brain has said. Well, Alejandro Mayorkas, actually functioning brainless, actually said, no, please, we didn't have anything to do with that Laken Riley situation. Watch.
A 22-year-old nursing student, I know you've been following this, Laken Riley in the state of Georgia was murdered allegedly by an undocumented Venezuelan migrant. The suspect had been detained by Border Patrol upon crossing, released with temporary permission to stay in the country. He then went on allegedly to commit crimes twice, once in New York for driving a scooter without a license and once in connection with a shoplifting case in Georgia. Did those states and their law enforcement communicate to the federal government that this had happened? Should this man have been deported?
A few thoughts. First, Margaret, first and foremost, an absolute tragedy.
So slimy.
And our hearts break for and our prayers are with the family. Number one.
Really news to me.
Number two, and importantly, as a prosecutor, having prosecuted violent crime and other crimes for 12 years, one individual is responsible for the murder, and that is the murderer. And we
what about when
work
it comes to
very
guns?
closely with state and local law enforcement to ensure that individuals who pose a threat to public safety are indeed our highest priority for detention and removal.
But are you saying there that the federal government had been informed about this individual and the alleged crimes he had committed in those states? Because he could have been deported if that was the case. Was there a breakdown in the system?
So, Margaret, there are a number of cities around the country that have varying degrees of cooperation with the immigration authorities. We firmly believe that
New York did not?
We firmly believe that if a city is aware of an individual who poses a threat to public safety, then we would request that they provide us with that information so that we can ensure that that individual is detained if the facts so warrant.
It's so weird because I feel like if the answer had just been no, we were not given that information, it would have been a very easy, he didn't have to waste his breath there. He just said a bunch of words that would have been rendered meaningless had the answer just been no. So the answer was obviously either yes, or he realizes that the federal government, without saying yes, that the federal government, of course, could have, just not let him into the interior of the country in the first place. Like, I don't need for him to come in and then commit the crime. Yeah. I just need for him to not commit the initial crime of walking across our border illegally. That would be great. Like, that in and of itself is already committing a crime. So we could just turn him right on back.
Yeah, the first crime he committed wasn't the one he committed in New York.
Right.
He crossed illegally into the United States of America. Okay, so did the federal government know about that? Because apparently there's a whole lot of things going on at the southern border the federal government doesn't know about. There's a lot of people in this country the federal government doesn't know about. I mean, what about the however many gotaways that are out there? We don't know where they are. You've released them with a court date to return and appear. They're not going to do that. Federal government, right arm doesn't know what the left arm's doing. Neither one of them cares. Listen, Brian Kemp, the governor of Georgia, wrote a letter to Joe Biden after this tragedy and said, after this murder, and said, why wasn't I informed that this person had been, had relocated to my state? The fact that you guys let him go in New York, released him, he's a person who is, he's a criminal. And why didn't I know? So apparently Brian Kemp, the governor of Georgia, had this sneaking suspicion that the federal government must have known something, because he's asking them, why did the federal government not notify me? So which is it? Mayorkas says, well, all this political speak that they put out there, a bunch of words and gobbledygook. At the end of the day, the guy should have never been here.
Right.
End of story.
Right.
Mayorkas, you have said for the last 3 years, the border situation is under control. This is a perfect example that proves it is not under control. So which is it? Now you guys on the left are going to turn around and say, well, if Republicans would get together and they would pass this bill out there. And listen, Joe Biden signed 94 executive orders into law his first 100 days, all of them regarding the border, his first 100 days of his administration. He doesn't need another law to overturn that, right? He could just revoke those executive orders.
Right.
Take it back to Trump era border security, and we don't have a problem.
Right.
But they're not going to say that. And she's not going to ask that question either. They're not going to go there. She thinks that's hardcore journalism by putting him on the spot. No, let's talk about the actual situation at the southern border. The fact, and I've said this to you, I might have said it on the show, I don't know. But the reason, you say, well, Americans murder other Americans and blah, blah, blah. This murder happened because of a federal policy.
Right.
Blood is on their hands. A federal policy created the scenario and circumstance whereby this murder happened, and it shouldn't have happened.
You can't prevent all murders, but the murders you can prevent, you should. Yeah. That's kind of the whole point of this federal government being the protector. Yeah. Or at least that's the way it was supposed to be.
If anybody wants any homework, all you got to do is go look at the illegal rates of crime, particularly violent crime and sexual crime that has escalated since 2021.
Exactly. All right, we got to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Chad, I don't know if you've seen, there's a new, push to protest male violence against women, and this is what it entails. Yeah, it's just grown-ass men marching a mile in a woman's shoes, which means marching in high heels. And I can't think of anything gayer.
Yeah, it's pretty gay. I said, I commented.
It's really gay.
I commented under this video, and what I said I won't repeat. It was pretty strong. But, people came back at me and said, why do you have a problem with these things that don't hurt you? These are men showing solidarity, and these are law enforcement.
No.
This is not the way.
No, that's just gay.
This is not the way. This is not what shows women that you stand with them.
No.
That you're on their side. They
No.
want strong men. Walking in red high heels is not the way.
That's not the way. That's not the way. It's just really gay. Thank you, Chad, for being here.
That.